Do you feel like you're not doing enough with the Charlotte Mason method? Maybe you'd like to actually go deeper in your child's education and not really sure where to go. Perhaps you're actually thinking of your child's education as separate grades instead of an entire educational path. If that's the case, I'd invite you to stay with me for the next 15 minutes or so while I show you the phases of an educational path. I'm Dollie Freeman. I'm an educational expert with the Charlotte Mason philosophy of education, and I would love the opportunity to equip you further in this method of education so that you can prepare your children for not only self education but for adulthood. In today's episode, I'm going to walk you through three different aspects, and you're going to be learning about the five paths, the five phases of the educational path. And then you're also going to learn about what each one does differently in each path to ensure that you're preparing your children for their education. And then finally, how the Charlotte Mason method perfectly aligns with these educational paths in order for you to prepare your child for adulthood. Now, as you can see, I'm in our vehicle. We're actually outside of Guadalupe State Park. The reception is really bad back there. And so we decided to just come on in because I want to make sure that I am doing this show as much as possible while we're on our 14-week RV adventure. So we're in the second week so far. So I'm real excited to be sharing this with you, even if it means I have to get into our vehicle and drive down the road to make sure I show up live for you all. Okay, so let's begin by talking about what these five phases of an educational path are. The first phase is a why phase. The why phase, I'm going to explain a little bit more to you, but this is something that your children will be doing from the very get go of their education. And when I say that, I'm talking as soon as they can talk. The second phase is what I call the debate phase. And the third phase is the philosophy phase. And this is a key one that you're going to want to make sure that you focus in on. And then the fourth phase is skill phase. The fifth is authority phase. So let me walk through each of these phases in more detail. But before I do, I want to talk to you about why it's so important to recognize these phases of an educational path and not focus in on the grades of each of your children. What I love about Charlotte Mason is she has forms. Forms is a grouping of children who has ages and skills necessary for the assignments inside each of these forms. And then, in addition to that, you have to be aware of not only your children's age, but their skills and their ability. And she recognized that some children would be behind in aspects of their education, while others may be advanced. And so she took those in consideration when she put together her forms. Now, we're not talking about that today, but what I want you to recognize is that in this aspect of looking at an educational phase, I want you to recognize that grades do not we're not going to recognize grades in here. Grades are stages that a child goes through in order for them to get through their educational phase. All right, so let's get started with phase one. Phase one is the why stage. This is from the time a child is born all the way through usually around 10, 11 possibly, but by that time they're going to start phasing into that next phase of debate phase. So in this why phase, there's stages of transition. Stages of transition, you'll know because your children will start saying why to you more. And this can happen anywhere from 1 or 2, possibly 3, depending on the skill and the thought process of your children. So when you start hearing questions, why is this? Why is that? Do your best in not discouraging those questions. And the reason is it's necessary for your children's education. Now, up to this point of your children actually saying these questions to you, they may have been processing it, but they did not know how to communicate it. And so they have been answering their own questions up to this point. Like, when mommy does this, why is she doing that? And how can I get her to do what I want? So they're already processing the why before they're verbal. But once they become verbal, and they cannot explain something themselves, they will then question the parent as to why something is that case. Now, your child is still in this why phase as they're getting a little bit older, and as late as 10, 11, and depending on your child's disposition and their personality, it could even last up to 12. You'll know they're still in this phase when they're asking deeper and deeper questions of why. So, this is when they're getting really analytical and they want to know how things are made, um, why you believe certain things, why something happened in a book. But you still want to recognize this is very much the why phase. And it just means their brain is processing information at a deeper level. This deeper level is key to how you use Charlotte Mason. Now, we'll get there in a minute. But what I want you to recognize is that the why questions advance as your child matures in their mechanics of thinking and reasoning. And that leads into the second phase, which is the debate phase. This debate phase is why what I call the debate is because a child will begin to question or challenge a parent. You'll begin to see this somewhere anywhere between 10 and 12 when a child begins to correct a parent who may left one or two words out of a something of that they're saying, and they heard it too, and so you may have misspoken one or two words, but you're still saying the same concept. That's the debate stage. This is when a child is coming out of that full trust of a parent and beginning to recognize that there are other point of views in this world, including their own, and they're going to begin to challenge you more. Now, when this happens, a child is going from that, why is it happening, to, are you sure that's the way it's happening? And they're beginning to challenge and debate. Now, a lot of people call this stage logical, the logic stage. But what I want you to recognize is this is how a person, not only the stuff that you should put in their um, in front of them to be processing, but this is also the stage in which defiance can easily happen, as well as leading on the path of rebellion, if we do not process this phase of a child's educational path properly. And so during this phase, your child, the more they're encouraged to debate, and they should debate, the more they debate in an unhealthy way, the more habits of defiance and rebellion will be in place. The key is recognizing that a child must process this information on their own. And it's in your duty as a parent that you must ensure that you put things in front of them to debate. Now, in this stage is when I like to give our children two point of views. Why do you think it's right? Instead of telling them why something is the case, getting their insights on it, helping them process that information, and then giving them a second point of view. You really want to make sure that you're doing this when a child gets into middle stage. So this is a perfect opportunity to introduce things like creation and evolution, two point of views of politics, two point of views of religion, and giving them the ability to sit and look at two completely different perspectives and help them process this. Now, you don't want to leave this completely up to chance. You want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence, that if they're choosing the wrong side, that you keep influencing them with different ideas. Also, in this debate stage, you want to be careful. If your children are following that defiance and rebellious stage, you want to be more quiet and offer influences of other people who align with your trust. Now, I mentioned a lot of this inside my newsletter this Monday, so I want you to recognize, if you're not on my list, this is key for moms, because let's face it, our kids are listening to us 24/7 and they're tired of hearing our voice. And so when they come into this debate stage and we're not giving them other wholesome ideas that align with us from a different voice, it's going to really, everything you say is just going to be taken the wrong way. So do your due diligence during this debate phase that can start anywhere from 10, 11, or 12 and continue into the 15 and 16 years old. You want to use these stages, these phases of a child's life to ensure that you're helping them to process this natural part of the educational process and getting them through this path to know what the right way is. Now that leads into the third phase. That third phase is the philosophy phase. This philosophy phase is when they have determined what they believe to be true. This could be about religion, this can be about worldviews or creation views, it could be about politics, what have you. But what you have to recognize is when a child comes into that 16, 17 years of age, they are already forming their own philosophies in life, and they may be very well different from yours. If they haven't processed through the debate phase naturally with what you've given to them, chances are they're going to be on the wrong side of what you are teaching and what you want them to have as adults. And this is what the homeschool community is finding, is that when their children are growing up and they leave the home and they go beyond books, that they're actually turning away from the philosophies of the parents. And that follows suit with what Charlotte Mason says about self-education is the only possible education. The rest is mere veneer laid on the surface of a child's nature. What we're seeing is that the family's principles are just that mere veneer laid on the surface. But when a child walks away, their self-education, those things of which they believe to be true in their philosophy, is what really is going to determine their path in life. So it's that debate phase that we really need to be focusing hard on our children, ensuring that we are supplying wholesome ideas that align with our values, our principles, as well as those core things they're going to need in adulthood. Because if we don't do that debate phase, the philosophies in which they have formed in their 15, 16, 17, 18 years are going to be a mere veneer that you won't realize until they've gone out of your house and gone the wrong way that's completely different from that which you've taught them. So you want to break this rising statistic in the homeschooling community, and you want to do your due diligence. Now, really quick, I'm going to continue the fourth phase. The fourth phase is skills phase. Now, if you follow the Charlotte Mason method, you will find dominant ideas already forming in your children in high school to the point where you can help mark out their career. But oftentimes, children might even graduate, even with the Charlotte Mason method, and have more dominant ideas than what they really are solid to know what they want to do in their future. So what I recommend you to realize is that that fourth phase of their educational path is to sharpen their skills, to learn more skills and broaden what they do. And normally this is done in the workplace. This is also done in college. It could be trade school, and it can go right into anything that is going to give them further skills. And so, what's really important to recognize is we need to have few skills to be able to use in most places. And the more skills you have, the more valuable you are, and the more opportunities will open up to you. So, we want to be thinking of skills for our children, and they broaden very wide with our opportunities out there. But the fifth phase is authority. And this is something that not a lot of children know what to do with, but many have this calling on their life. And that's for entrepreneurship. This is owning their own business, whether it be a small business or making a big business idea. You still need skills, business skills. You still need leadership skills. You still need to know the hands-on things that your entrepreneurship might require or your business might require. So skills is still something you have to process through. But some people have those entrepreneurial gifts and callings on their life, and that leads into that fifth path of authority. So you, as a parent who you might already see, man, this kid has a lot of leadership opportunity or potential. This child has a desire to make money on their own. They're coming up with a whole lot of money ideas. You're going to really want to focus in on leadership skills. You're going to really want to help them understand what it looks like to build a business, to have entrepreneurship skills as well. So you can still be focusing in on these, especially in the middle school and high school years. But not overlooking that important debate phase. I think the debate phase is probably the biggest overlooked aspect within the homeschooling community, which has led to the sad statistics of children walking away from their Christian values and faith once they leave the homeschool. So, really quick, I'm going to talk really fast about the 5 paths again. So, you have your why phase, you have your debate phase, your philosophy phase, your skill phase, and your authority phase. Not all children will go into that authority phase, but it is important to not skip the skill phase because that will lead to a more productive and profitable authority phase if they were to have entrepreneurial skills. So let's talk really quick as I close out this episode is how the Charlotte Mason perfectly fits each of these phases. So what I want you to recognize is Charlotte Mason, yes, it uses narration, but the narration changes as a child progresses through each of these phases. So we're not just saying, what did you learn? We're going to change it from why in that first phase, why, what, getting the details out in that first phase to then comparison and helping them contract between one thing and the other one so that they can have a debate of which way is the best way, which way is a way that shouldn't be taken, and helping form their opinions so that when they get into that third phase and you then change their narration into what do you think is right and why do you think this is right, will help them then narrate a bit differently. So I want you to recognize that, yes, narration is very much a part of Charlotte Mason, but what we're missing and what a lot of people fall short in is helping it get deeper to help a child process through these educational phases, which is what Charlotte Mason does within her forms, is help move a child's skill and maturity each and every phase of the way. So I hope that helps you to understand each of these phases along the way. And I hope that you will take time to process your children, identify what phase each of your children are in, and then recognize how you can help them process through each phase along the way. And if you have a child who is in that debate phase that are really struggling with you with your parental things, stop and get some influences that align with your truth and put that as part of the supplying the ideas that you give to them, and just be quiet and allow them to process it. Without your voice in it, it'll go much further, much faster. Thank you for coming in on this episode today. I look forward to sharing with you next week, same time, live streaming on Facebook and YouTube at 3 p.m. 3 p.m. Eastern time. And I'm not sure what I'm going to be sharing with you at that point, but you do want to stay tuned. I look forward to talking to you next time. Until then, bye for now.